There is a dignity in helping parents, even difficult parents that are horrible to you. There is an honor. When you look back after they're gone, I will tell you this. For the clients I've had who've had really tough aging parents and an emotionally fraught journey, after the parent is gone, they have never regretted helping. Never. I'm Carolyn Rosenblatt, a registered nurse, public health nurse, and an attorney. I have a 10-year nursing background, and I made a lot of home visits during that time working as a public health nurse. Before that, I was in hospitals, nursing homes, and I've seen a lot of the aging journey from the perspective of someone who's had hands-on. In the practice of law, which I did for 27 years, I represented injured people. Some of those people were older, and I saw how beat up they were in the legal system and how their healing journey from an injury was different from that of a younger person. And after I decided to retire from combat, because litigation and trial work is very stressful, my kids are out of college, I didn't need to keep up that pace, I thought, what can I do that might be useful? There's a lot of experience here that you can't just get by reading a book. So let me think about resolving family fights. That would be good, because a lot of older people have kids and they don't get along, and it's not so easy. And that quickly evolved from mediating family fights into a consulting practice, which I do now. And as I got involved in it, and especially working with families, I asked my adorable psychologist husband, to whom I've been married for 43 years, Dr. Davis.
Congrats.
I said, thank you. I said, honey, is there a nut case in every family?
100%. I think there is.
And he just laughed and he said, at least one. I said, guess what? I need you to join me. You've been a psychologist for decades. There's an emotional undercurrent in all of these, which you pick up on faster than I do with all your years of clinical experience. He's very kind and very sensitive and a really good listener. And so we are now partners and we do our work together.
That's really cool. That's very, very cool that you kind of went your separate ways, raised the kids, and now you're back doing this practice. So what do you see happening? Where's the disconnect with families? And I'm going to say they're mostly, I'm going to assume they're older parents.
Yes. Our website is agingparents.com, so that would say it right there.
Exactly. Good domain, by the way. Very good choice on the domain for sure. So what are we missing? What makes these families fight so much over the parents that raised them?
I think part of the problem is that our society is very death phobic. We don't look at disability, the gliding toward the end of life, or the stumbling toward the end of life realistically. I mean, think about it. People say, in case anything ever happens to me, like it's not going to, like you're not going to reach the end of your life, like there's not going to be a time where you need help. People don't want to face it because we are a youth-focused society. I think we all know as mature adults that there's a lot of discrimination against older people, not just in the workplace, but across the board. What do you see older people doing in a TV commercial? Taking medication, right? Dancing and talking about their diabetes and their plaque psoriasis and whatever. It's like disgusting. I mean, who's singing about that stuff?
Nobody's. I don't think anybody's singing about it. They just want to sell drugs, and it's
That's right.
But I agree with you. I think that our aging population, because I'm going to tell you, and I've told other people, probably 90% of my clientele is 65 and older. Oh. And it's a lot of people that are selling because they can't afford utilities now. And so they're selling all this equity. They're selling because of that. And I'm fortunate that most of the clients I've represented, their families have been really, really wonderful. It takes a little bit more time, but just witnessing and just sitting and listening to the stories of how they're treated in the store, how they're treated. I watched my own parents when they were in the hospital and how rude staff is to them. And it's as if they don't matter anymore and they're discarded. And we focus on all of this affordable housing right now is the big thing. But affordable for whom? It's not affordable for
That's right.
seniors.
No,
And they're
it's
the
not.
biggest part of our population. It's crazy. I don't mean to
And
steal your four, but
no,
that's my
you're right,
little.
though. You're right, Robyn. And the fastest growing poverty group in our country is single women over 65. Okay. They've either lost a husband or they have been divorced. There's a lot about gray divorce these days or whatever. They just didn't plan ahead. So if there is a focus I'd like to bring up in this discussion, which I appreciate you having me to do, it's about planning. It's about looking realistically at the aging process. It's about looking at what happens if you can't be young and do all the things you were used to doing anymore. There's a big move toward, encouraging people to age in place. At the same time, there's a big move to get people to move into high-end assisted living facilities. It's a problem because people didn't think about it. They never thought they wanted to go to what they call God's waiting room, which is the home care, the facility, whatever. So that is what takes thinking, and it takes facing the truth. Most people who live to be, let's say, over 75 are probably going to need some kind of help at some time before they pass. That's the truth.
Yes, a
Now,
hundred
can they,
percent
can they
agree.
live at home? Maybe. But we are not proactively trying for healthy aging. Most people in this country do not actively get at least the minimum the American Heart Association recommends in terms of exercise, which could just mean brisk walking 3 times a week. They don't
Mhm.
do that. So then the chronic illnesses start middle age and they continue to get worse and worse and worse. And pretty soon, my mother-in-law lived to be 96 and she was taking 14 different pills a day. Okay. And she worked at it. She did pretty well. And she wanted to stay at home. Her husband passed. They've been married 62 years. I think she's not atypical of people who are Depression era people. And after her husband passed, she realized that she was going to be struggling by herself. She wouldn't touch a computer. And after he died, my beloved husband, the shrink, said,
Yeah, shrink.
um, Mom, do you think maybe you want to look at the computer? She says, no. And he said, well, we're going to have to pay all your bills for you. She goes, oh my God, I don't want you to have to do that. So he sat down with her and tried to figure out what the hangup was. She had arthritis in her hands. She couldn't use the mouse. He got her a
Oh,
trackball. And all of a sudden, Alice at 86 is going on the net and Googling stuff and publishing jokes and looking things up. It was so funny. And he had remote access to her computer. So when she'd call him up and say, Nicole, there are too many Googles, he could
there's
figure
too
out what
many. Oh, my brother had to take my mom's remote and put tape over all the buttons because I do not know why. She
yeah.
would get out of something, couldn't get back into something, and it just became a joke. I'm like, her phone, my phone's not working. What button did you
Mhm.
push? I didn't push any buttons.
Right.
I'm like, okay, mom.
But the technology gap is part of the planning problem. Because what
Yes.
I'm seeing that surprises me, adult children are not willing to step in the way a kindly psychologist's son would do and say, here's how you do this. Here's how you protect yourself. Here's how you avoid getting taken advantage of. But when you look at what also happens with a lot of older people, there is cognitive decline. It's age focused, age related, age risked, but the risk of cognitive impairment of any kind increases fivefold about every 5 years after 65. What that means is by the time a person gets to be 85, their chances are more than 1 in 3, they say now, of having Alzheimer's or other dementia. So that's, I think, the biggest risk people don't want to look at. Everybody's afraid of it. People used to say, oh my God, getting cancer would be the most terrible thing. Now they say getting dementia would be the most horrible thing. So it's a combination of legal planning, which a lot of people have not paid enough attention to, financial planning, which a lot of people have not paid attention to, And responsibility planning. Who's going to step in and take over? Who's going to help? If mom or dad can't live by themselves anymore and they've got to sell the house to pay for whatever it is they need somewhere else, who's going to be in charge of that? Who's going to facilitate the move? You're not going to just dump them somewhere. It's a scary thing. People are terrified to leave their home typically, don't you think?
Well, I don't think they're just terrified to leave their home. That is, and that's their security blanket. Their
Yeah,
home and everything in that home, that
yeah,
is their security blanket.
that's
And
right.
what I've witnessed is family will come in thinking, I'm going to help mom. And they start moving all of her stuff and telling her what to do. And oh boy, the conversations I've witnessed. I mean, this what such sweet clients. This one lady looks at her kids and says, puts her hands on the table. She goes, "You hear me now. This is my house, and these are my things, and we will do things my way." It goes back to that because you're old, we'll just treat you like you're a 2-year old.
Right.
And it's not that they don't realize that they have to move. It's not that they don't realize that there's an issue. They have the hardest problem letting go of their security. And now at 83 years old, you're saying, we're going to uproot you. You're going to start a new life somewhere, but we're really not going to tell you how we're going to take care of you. We just can't do it here.
Yeah, well, that's the problem too. And with my mother-in-law being an example, she was a pretty independent, pretty feisty woman. And she did take very good care of herself. Unlike a lot of people, she watched what she ate, she exercised, she didn't drink to excess, she didn't smoke, she didn't abuse her body. And after her husband passed, the big family home had to be sold. It was just too big for her. She stayed there for a little while. She moved into a smaller home. Okay. And we're thinking, okay, mom, maybe a seniors community would be a good idea. The smaller home lasted about 18 months, but it was in her community. It was a
Oh,
seniors community with a pool and recreational facilities and a clubhouse and her friends, and they could play mahjong and whatever. But she couldn't screw in light bulbs and do things with her hands and get pill bottles open. And she finally just threw up her hands, and she called my husband up one day and said, "Okay, I'm ready." And he said,
okay.
"Ready for what? What, ready for what, mom?" She goes, I'm ready to move." He said, "What we do? Don't you
You
think
just
we ought to
moved.
like, look around and find you the right place?" Now, his sister and only sibling lived in Southern California. We live in Northern California. She doesn't like the weather here. It's too cold. Mind you, she'd been living in the desert near Palm Springs. And so they found a place within a few blocks of where her daughter lived. And I remember interviewing her before the move. We're still in the house. And I said, "What do you think was the hardest thing about making the decision?" And she just said, "Making the decision." You know? But we
Yeah,
took her to that facility, which was nice. I mean, it was a nice 1 bedroom. We had done a lot of modifications to make it good. I mean, this is my field, so I made sure she had things that meant something to her. She had a choice. We didn't just dump her there. We
right.
accompanied her and stayed with her. And, she was having some trouble with her knees, so we brought her upstairs in this wheelchair. And she looked at the door and she said, "Well, I guess this is my new home." And she was sad. There were tears.
It's sad just hearing the story.
Yeah, but she adapted. She was a social enough person. Lucky for us, she knew that moving to Los Angeles from where she had been was going to be a lot of traffic. She gave up driving voluntarily, thank goodness. I'm a former plaintiff's personal injury lawyer who dealt with a lot of car accidents, and a
Yeah,
lot of older people definitely should not be driving. How to get the car keys away is in one of my books. But anyway, she learned how to use an Uber and got around
good
and
for
went
her.
to a lot of events. They had gambling night and she'd go do that. They had cards and she had a mahjong game going. She did actually quite well. We had caregivers that came in during the last couple years or so because she was having mobility issues, and they were wonderful. And one of them, Robert, who was adorable, came to see her at the very end when she was in the hospital. And, she was kind of out of it. She'd had lots of issues. She was in kidney failure. And he walked in the door and he squatted down so he's at eye level with her. And she said, it. I mean,
Aww.
that relationship was precious. But another point I want to make about people who choose to age in place is that home care workers are not how it used to be. There is a very short supply. I always encourage people to use an agency because they are bonded and the person is vetted. They've done a background check. Critical. Because the second most common thieves committing financial elder abuse, other than family, are caregivers. So we need to attend to that. But let's talk about the ones who decide to move. You've got their house sold. They're ready to go to the wonderful assisted living the family found for them. They never ask the elder, what sort of environment would suit you? A small place or a big one with the fancy furniture and all the activities? It's the children, the adult children, who look at it and are sold by the environment. But I can tell you from seeing a lot of difficulties in people, assisted living is not for everyone.
My
If a
mom would not
person,
go.
yeah,
She
I mean,
absolutely, she said, I'm not going.
yeah,
We had to put her in an assisted living facility after a really bad episode that she had. And she basically had to, they had to rehab her because she had to learn to walk and get stronger. And it was 2 weeks of pure hell.
hmm,
She was screaming, fighting us, everything. And she said, you swore you would never do this to me. And I'm like, but mom, nobody, she was living with my brother. He built an entire wing on his house for her. And she just thought she could go back there. But you can't get that kind of care in home without a lot of financial planning because it's
oh
very
yeah,
expensive.
quite. I mean, the average cost in California now is $45 an hour, at least in the Bay Area. And if you have somebody 24/7, if they're that much in need, you're talking 30,000 a month, a lot. So I think there are so many considerations about where the person's going to be. But what I advocate for is kind of what the law says. The person is deemed competent for whatever decisions until the law says they're not. Well, this gets back to the cognitive decline piece. How do you know if they're not? There are warning signs that people like to ignore. Mom can't remember that she had an appointment or that I was coming over or that we're having a family dinner. Oh, she's just getting old. That kind of memory loss is not normal aging. It is a warning sign of cognitive impairment, which can go down very slowly, or it can take a sharp turn down with a head injury or a stroke or a traumatic event, anything. But I think that people need to respect that cognitive impairment is a serious problem that's going to affect the family, the adult children. Ultimately, dementia is fatal unless they die of something else. Ultimately, they are going to need help. People cannot function if they can't remember where the bathroom is. People cannot function independently if they leave the stove on or the water running. And those danger signs are often ignored. And if people come to me in the consulting practice that I have and they say, well, I'm kind of concerned about my mom. I mean, she has a few memory problems. She doesn't want to go anywhere, but we think she really needs to because she keeps falling. So they're focused on the falling and the memory loss as a minimal thing. And maybe it's the other way around. I have to probe and ask a lot of questions.
Do you feel people think the memory loss is just a normal aging thing and not necessarily something like, oh, mom has a bad heart or mom suffers from strokes? They put this memory thing as, oh, she's just old.
Yeah,
And it's an
that's what I'm
old thing.
saying. That's very dismissive. It's a warning sign. Memory loss, maybe you can't remember somebody's name. Okay, that's normal. Maybe you can't remember the name of the play you saw last year. That's normal. Someone described it well. They say as you get older, you have so many files to go through that when you have to remember them, you got to go through a lot of files and then it'll come to you. So there's a delay in retrieval, as we call it, of certain things. But forgetting what the car keys are for is not the same as forgetting where you put them. That's a distinction. Memory loss the kind of day-to-day memory loss that interferes with your normal life is not normal aging. And that's where people do not want to draw the line and say, gosh, mom might have mild cognitive impairment or dementia. Let's talk about those two terms. There's no easy way to diagnose dementia. They're working on a blood test for Alzheimer's, but they don't have one yet. So it's typically reported information from the elder, him or herself, or the family that brings them to the doctor. And maybe they're doing just fine when they see the doctor. Mm-hmm. Yes, doctor, I'm doing great. No, I don't have any pain. Yes, I'm taking my heart pills. Everything's fine. That's 15 minutes.
I don't know if this is common or not. You tell me. My mom was a liar when it came to going to see the doctor.
They are. One of the first blogs
Why?
Because they don't want to be put in a home. If the doctor knows the truth, they are frightened that they're going to get diagnosed with something, they're going to lose control of their lives. Sometimes they forget, but mostly the denial is part of their fear of losing control. But the doctor may hear from their daughter, son, whoever, nephew, and they say, well, she's forgetting her pills and she didn't remember that she had these appointments and so on. And they'll diagnose them with mild cognitive impairment. That's a catch-all term. Doesn't mean much except, there's some memory loss. Okay. Thank you very much. We already knew that.
That's why we're here, doctor.
Yeah. Most of the time, mild cognitive impairment progresses to dementia. Not all the time. Some people just have mild cognitive impairment and they stay that way, and that's the way they go to the end of their lives. But when it goes forward into dementia, then we have a care issue. That is expensive, and the decisions about how care is going to be delivered and where are driven by how much money the person has.
Well, and I also think that, so my in-laws are both in their early 90s, and my father-in-law still drives. We all get alerted when he's ready to go out. And they're trying so hard to take his keys away. He shouldn't be driving because he's got bad knees, and he forgets, not as much because my mother-in-law also has full-blown dementia. She cannot remember if you're sitting in front of her. She'll say, "Oh, it's so nice to see you, Robbyn." "Oh, Robbyn, when did you get here?" And it's sad. It's so sad. But she lives at home, and my father-in-law takes care of her. And my father-in-law fell the other day, and we were like, "Oh, thank goodness, Dad finally is going to go to the senior facility they have picked out." And he just snookered them. "Oh, I'm talking to the guy. No, you know what? I'm feeling better. I can take care of Mom."
Mm-hmm. Until
And
they
the
both fall.
kids, and the kids are just, they're like, okay, and they can't force them to. They can't say, "Get out of your house."
Well, that depends. I mean, you can force somebody if they're under conservatorship. That's about the only way. But there was a case exactly like you're describing that I personally was involved in. Mom was in a wheelchair, and they lived in a 2-story house. They'd been there 50 years. They had one daughter. Nobody had planned ahead. Dad fell on the stairs, ended up in the hospital. Daughter suddenly is sucked into the situation she wasn't prepared for. And Dad decided that he was going to be pressured to going into a senior care facility. He actually kind of liked it. For one thing, he didn't have to take care of his wife. But the other part of it, he was physically impaired enough that he appreciated the help. It was assisted living. Daughter is there with Mom, and Mom, who's in a wheelchair and is by herself now, does not want to go to the same facility where Dad was. Okay. And I met with her. I met with the daughter. The parents had never given their daughter durable power of attorney agency, so daughter could handle the bills and the money and all this. What are you going to do? So Mom was cognizant enough that she had, at least in my lawyerly assessment, enough of her marbles, shall we say, to sign a durable power of attorney. It has to be notarized. So I set this up with the daughter, who had taken time off work to make all this happen. And I got a mobile notary to be waiting outside. I got the mom, and I explained to her, because the daughter had shoved things in front of her. Mom was visually impaired. The reason she hadn't signed stuff, she couldn't see. She couldn't see it. I had
Oh,
figured that out. In many years of nursing practice, you can tell when somebody's maybe got an issue with one of their senses. So I read the document to her. It's kind of long. I said, I'm going to give you the gist of it. Here's the beginning. This is a legal document. You're giving up power, da, da, da. And I said to her, she says, well, my daughter can take care of all that. I said, well, the law is kind of picky. They make you have someone that you've signed papers to give that authority to, or they can't really act on your behalf. In fact, she can't pay the bills. She said, oh, really? And I said, yeah, let me help you because I brought the paper. And so I read everything to her that it said, and that's okay, because there are boxes to check, all of the above. They can do everything. And I said, okay, now you need to sign it. And can you see the line where you need to sign? She had some glasses that didn't work very well. And she signed. I said, we have to have this notarized. I said, I know somebody that's available right now. Would that be okay? So the notary comes in, shakes hands, very nice to her. And she said, that's fine. He said, well, I need to see some ID. She didn't have a driver's license. All of her paperwork was in a backpack sitting
oh,
behind her.
oh,
I
wow.
said, do you have a tax return? She said, yes. And I said to the notary, can you give her a little slack because there's no California ID and no driver's license? He said, yes, I will accept the certified signature tax return because you're swearing it to the IRS. That's you. He notarized that document. Daughter took over. Mom eventually went to the same care facility as Dad. It worked out. But the transition and the need to have an agent, this is what I mean by planning, the legal document was essential.
What are some of the documents that, so we've got so many, I mean, all of us right now, all of my friends, their parents are all in their 80s and 90s. And one by one, we're all losing parents,
Yes,
unfortunately. And
mine are
we're
gone.
all kind of going through this same scenario. I mean,
Yes,
fortunately, my mom had her trust and all the things that she needed to have. My in-laws, are very well prepared as well. But so many people are not prepared. What are
right.
some of the documents that we should make sure we have if and when things happen to our parents?
Absolutely, if there's a house, should have a trust. Trust is like a legal box. You put your property in the trust. You can put lots of things in IRA, all kinds of things, your Keo, money, investments. You can put a lot of things in the trust, especially real estate. If you don't, then you have to go to probate court after they die. And that the lawyer can take 4% of the total value of everything. And if they ask for extraordinary fees, the judge gives them to them. So they can take a lot of money because you didn't bother to spend a few $1,000 on getting a trust. Okay. There's more to say about the trust, but I'm going to give you the list first
Okay.
of the three. Trust, the family trust. Parents are usually the trustees for each other. That can be a problem if they're both losing it at the same time. I'm going to talk about that in a second. A durable power of attorney and a healthcare directive. Some people call the healthcare directive a power of attorney for healthcare. Those three are essential. Okay, back
Okay.
to the trust. The trusts are done by lawyers using software, and they customize it for various things. But the biggest flaw that I've seen, which creates a nightmare for families, is, let's say dad's losing his marbles. He's been ripped off by an artist of con who has gotten him to give him $50,000 because of an internet thing. And he was told that it was the Prince of Arabia who's going to give him a hundredfold return. I mean, whatever. Elder abuse is $37 billion a year problem in our country. Okay. Financial elder abuse. Okay. The trust, written by a lot of lawyers, and I've written articles and published them in the bar journals and all this, it usually says you have to have two medical doctors to say you're incapacitated before you can be removed. Because if dad thinks he's fine, even though he just got ripped off, he doesn't recognize that he's impaired, but everybody else does. So he doesn't want to go to the doctor. It's much less two. Do you know how much time Medicare gives a doctor to see a patient? 15
Oh,
minutes.
It's so fast.
You think you're going to do a cognitive assessment in 15 minutes? Absolutely not. A lot of doctors won't even do it. And besides, which doctor? The orthopedist, the oncologist, the rheumatologist? I mean, get real. They're not going to do that. So I advise families to look at amending that trust to have the language changed in case either aging loved one develops cognitive decline. There are lots of other things they can do. All of the successor trustees can vote and say, Dad's got to be off this trust. Or they can have a committee of younger friends who say, look, Joe, you're out of here. We get it. Can't do this anymore. Or they can have one treating physician, not two. Or they can have a licensed psychologist like my husband do an assessment with neuropsychological testing, get test scores and say, this person is too impaired to handle money. Okay, there are ways to do this. Or in one case, the elder was held by her live-in boyfriend who wouldn't let her go to the doctor. It took a sheriff's officer, my husband, her son, and a friend to get this woman out of the house to Kaiser so she could be seen and assessed.
Wow.
The lawyer had put into that trust, God love her, she was a great lawyer, if the person is held under duress, like this lady was, for 30 days or more, that means they are resigned as trustee of that trust. Single mother with $1 million.
Wow. So she had a good attorney that saw something was not right and that protected her.
Wasn't doing the usual, let's just do the software with the 2 doctor rule in it. I mean, it's a pain.
Right.
They all do it. It's, pro forma. But I think that that's something what planning is about. Planning is the possibility that they may need help, not just because of physical needs, they have to be in a wheelchair or they have a cane or a walker or whatever. The cognitive piece. Plan for that. What if they resist going to a doctor? That takes planning and a really good lawyer. If that old-fashioned trust that was done 30 years ago says 2 doctors have to declare you incapacitated, amend it. Trust can be amended, and that can be changed.
Advice. That's great advice. So I know you're short on time, so I don't want to take much more of it. Is there anything that we haven't really covered that you want people to really pay attention to? The cognitive is huge. Is there anything else? And also, I want to know, where can people go? You've got this great website with the great URL that I want people to know about. What else are we missing? What can people start reading and getting themselves educated? So, because I always feel people don't know the questions that they have to ask.
They
Where
don't.
can
A
they
lot of
start?
people call me. A lot of people call me. They say, Carolyn, I've got all these problems. I don't even know where to start. So I help them figure out the strategy. Our website has blog posts on it, and those blog posts contain a lot of stories. So agingparents.com, if they don't want to spend any money and get a consultation, fine. That's why I wrote the blogs. That's why I wrote the book, The Family Guide to Aging Parents. I have lots of other books, including hiring a home care worker, that kind of thing. I write a lot. I like to write. I did, write on Forbes for 15 or so years. But for people who just want to get data, I think a good place to start is our website. There are very few people who have the medical piece and the psychological piece and the legal piece all in one place. So that's a niche where we are. If you talk to lawyers, they don't know about healthcare. Lawyers learn nothing about dementia in law school. If you talk to healthcare people, they don't know the law. They don't understand durable power of attorney and who's in charge and who you got to ask and why you need permission. I mean, they don't know. So we put those things together. But I think it's just important, if somebody has aging loved ones that are in their, let's say, late 70s to early 80s, it's time to look at the legal documents. Ask mom or dad if you can see them. Why would they keep that a secret? Oh, you're going to take my money. You're going to take advantage of me. But if you can get past that resistance and say, look, we're just trying to plan so you don't get thrown in a home. Oh my God, put in a home. That's your bargaining chip. And another way to persuade an elder is, I know you've said, mom, dad, grandpa, you don't want to be a burden to us. Not showing me what you've got legally is a burden, because I'm going to get the call in the middle of the night and I won't know what to do. Please help me. That's how you unburden me. Those are your negotiating tactics.
That's a great approach. There's so much. And I think the other thing that is really difficult is when they do get sick and you're trying to work through all of this healthcare and you're trying to figure out, like my mom's insurance, she's got the Medicare, but she had another, whatever the additional insurance, and all of the local hospitals stopped taking it. So she recently had an incident and they had to take her an hour away. And it was, and I'm like, how is this? It's not health insurance. I really want to call it death insurance is really what it is.
Yeah.
And it's just the
That's
whole
just, but
system. Go ahead.
well, the system's broken. The healthcare system's broken. And I think when somebody assigns a person to be their agent on their healthcare directive / durable power of attorney for healthcare, whatever you call it, you need somebody who's not afraid to stand up to doctors. When my father-in-law was dying in the hospital at UCLA, and he wanted no extraordinary measures, he wanted to glide out. They were doing everything to him. And, Ms. Bossy over here gets in his face. And I said, Doctor, could you please tell me what you think extraordinary measures are? He could not get out of the ICU waiting room fast enough. I'm going on vacation for 4 days and we'll see how he's doing when I get back. So we had to advocate for him to allow them to withdraw the 8 IVs he was getting so that he could just have pain medication and die peacefully, which he did. But without that, I'm not sure how long they would have kept him going, drugged up, in pain, unable to communicate, had a trach. I mean, this is not the way most people want to glide out of here. So
I don't think that people know that they can go in because when my mom lived near me, I was her advocate. I was my dad's advocate. And my dad at one point said, honey, don't be so mean to the doctors. I'm like, what?
Well, there's this reference for doctors.
He might quit. He might quit. And I said, I might kick him in the butt and kick him out myself before he quits. And he says, well, I told you guys all a long time ago, your father had cancer. And I was like, I think I would have remembered that. I mean, I don't think that I'm ignorant, but it's that tone, and it's just, it's how they were taught. You respect the doctor and you don't talk back. And I was like, I had just come off my mom having a huge stroke. So I knew how everything, I saw the right way the way they put a team around her and took care of her was magnificent. And so when I wanted the same thing for my dad, they were like, well, you don't. And I said, I'm going to tell you what I want. So you can either be on the team or you can be off the team, because I'm picking the team right now and you might just be benched. And my dad was like, honey. And I'm like, don't, but people don't know that they can be that way.
I teach them.
Good for you.
That's part of my look. I was a litigator and a trial lawyer for 27 years. I don't take crap. And I teach people how to advocate for themselves. And I ghostwrite letters for them to put things in a way that's polite and that's going to work, to persuade doctors. If they need a statement from a doctor, I'll ghostwrite it for them. Say, here's the statement that I need to show that dad is impaired and can't be the trustee anymore. Whatever it is, people sometimes need guidance. They need to learn how to be advocates. And that's part of the consulting work that we do. Besides figuring out the strategy, when you've got a really stubborn aging parent who doesn't want to do anything they should do, and you're watching them, put their lives at risk.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I think it was really, it's eye-opening. And I hope that everyone who hears this learns something and they advocate. And I think if we could just get a little bit more respect for our elders, it would be phenomenal. One at a time.
I agree. And I think that if we support one another along the journey of having to care for aging parents, which, as you say, is very widespread now. There's so many of us who are middle-aged-ish who have parents who are 80s, 90s, sometimes older. I've had a client whose mother was 103. People need support. We not only can support each other, but we can help each other find resources beyond our circle of friends or whatever, so that we're getting actual data, not something on Reddit that may be wrong or Instagram that may be wrong, but from reliable sources. And I appreciate you asking the questions that you did, because you're living it. There's nothing like your real world living it experience to inform
In the
you
thick
about
of it.
where the pain is. And for everybody who's listening, you're not alone. There are resources out there for you. Not just me, one little old nurse attorney who's trying to make a little difference here and there, but there is the, Alzheimer's Association, which is called a little bit something society now, I think. There are online support groups. There are local agencies of all kinds, senior centers that give referrals. There's a lot of support. People just need to reach out and be willing to admit that they don't know everything, that this is hard, but we can all get through it because everyone does. We all get there. It's just how painful is it going to be if we don't get
Well,
help?
and I think you would do the same thing if you had a toddler that had a
Yeah.
problem. You would
Yes,
research the world out of it. It's the same thing. It just has a bigger number on it.
it
I
does.
mean,
And I
that's,
think
you know,
there is a dignity in helping parents, even difficult parents that are horrible to you. There is an honor. When you look back after they're gone, I will tell you this, for the clients I've had who've had really tough aging parents and a emotionally fraught journey, after the parent is gone, they have never regretted helping. Never.
right. It is hard. Carolyn,
Yeah.
thank you for being on I'm Just Saying. We got to so many great points, and I think people
Thank,
will learn a lot from this short little time we had together. Thanks
thank
for
you very
joining
much.
me.
Thanks you very much for the invitation. I appreciate you and I appreciate all the questions and the opportunity to share.
Beautiful. Have a wonderful evening. I think that we're right on time so you can get to your next appointment.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much.
I'm Robbyn Battles, and I'm Just Saying. I want to thank you for listening. I hope you'll come back for future episodes and be sure to like, share, and follow. I'm Just Saying. Let's get to the point. I'm Robbyn Battles.